Alright, what is up you guys, and welcome back to the 98 English course. In today's recording, we're going to be going over Unit 9, Sports and Leisure. So let's hop right in. Here we have the key vocab. We have activity, amateur, bird watching, collect, collection, collecting, collector, creative, do-it-yourself, DIY, enjoy, equipment, fishing, free time, gardening, hobby, hobbyist, interests, leisure time, model making, photography, pleasure, popular, professional, stamp collecting, stargazing. Alright, so that was the key vocab. Now let's hop right into listening. Alright, so here we have some pictures, and actually let me open this so you guys can get a better view of the pics here. Alright, so here we have the pictures, and what do the pictures have in common, you guys? So that's exercise A. What do all of these pics have in common? Well, all of these pictures, there's something happening, basically. So there's an action happening, whether it's cooking, model making, I don't know, gardening, playing musical instruments. There's something happening, okay? Write the activity name under each picture. Alright, so A, we'll say cooking, right? It's pretty simple, cooking. B, this is actually called model making. Okay, so B is model making. C is obviously watching TV. Okay, and D, I think this is stamp collecting, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll say stamp collecting. Excuse me, stamp collecting. And E, here we'll say the action is, or activity is, playing a musical instrument or playing guitar. So I'll just say playing guitar. Okay? Then we have F. This is pretty simple. Gardening. Gardening. Oh. Gardening. Okay? Gardening. And then we have, and wow. G. G, we'll say photography. Photography. Okay? And H, this is something called DIY, or basically do it yourself. If you go on the internet and let's say you have anything basically related to your house or your office or any place that you basically use to live. I mean, if you say do it yourself or Google something called do it yourself and a specific problem, you'll get tons of solutions that don't include you going to the plumber, for example, or the carpenter and having to get stuff fixed or bought. Or even if you have to buy some stuff, they're either really cheap or minimal, so you don't really have to spend much or go out of your way to get whatever you need. So that's basically the picture here. Someone's trying to fix their sink, right, with the DIY, basically doing it on their own with minimal equipment, if any, are needed anyway. Okay? And then we have I. This is simple. This is fishing, right? So this is fishing. What else do we have? We have J. Skateboarding. I think all you guys know what skateboarding is. Skateboarding. And K. Reading. And L is, you could either say playing or gaming, right? Gaming is also, I think gaming fits this picture perfectly. Yeah, so we'll say gaming. What else do we have? Answer these questions with a partner. Alright, which of the free time activities are hobbies? Okay, well, for some of the free time activities are hobbies, definitely not TV. Because if you consider TV, like watching TV as a hobby, then I'm sorry, you need to get a life. Anyway, I'll definitely say model making can be a hobby. Gardening can be a hobby. Playing musical instruments in general can be a really good hobby. Photography can be a hobby. I don't know, what else? Skateboarding? I think gaming can also be, or could also be classified as a free time activity hobby, right? Alright, which of these activities are creative, you guys? Well, we'll definitely say cooking, because you gotta be creative to make some great food, okay? I mean, you don't gotta be, it's just that creative people tend to make, I don't know, different dishes, different styles. You get the idea. Model making could also be considered creative. Playing the guitar as well. Gardening could be creative, and photography. Yeah, I think that's about it. C, which are popular with everybody. Alright, so which of these activities do people usually do on the daily? Definitely cooking, yes. What else? That's correct. We have watching TV as well. Yeah, I mean, not as much as before, but everybody back in the day used to watch TV. Till now, actually. People just mindlessly watch TV. What else? We'll say, I think that's about it. Maybe reading, if you consider I think that as technology advances, we stop reading that much, except for people that read on technology, such as smartphones. But reading, man, reading gets bad credit. Reading is important. Reading is really important. Anyway, D, which are more popular with a particular age group? Alright, we'll definitely say that gardening is something that you see, I don't know, you don't see young teens doing gardening. It's usually something that older people do, right? People that are on the older side of things. What is fishing as well? I don't think fishing, although the picture says otherwise, I don't think teenagers or young adults enjoy going fishing often. Could be me though. What else? What else? Gaming. I mean, there are obviously almost always exceptions, but I mean, a lot, the people who game are usually either kids or young adults / teenagers. All of these are probably the only groups that know how to hold a controller without looking every 2 seconds at the buttons to know what they're pressing. Anyway, what else do we have? Which are more popular with men and which are more popular with women? Right, you guys, so don't hate me for what I'm about to say, but back in the day, cooking was something that a lot of women do. Well, here come the feminist women, whatever. You get the idea. Back in the day, women were the holy grail of cooking. I mean, now, obviously, both men and women enjoy cooking, but I'll just say that back in the day, an activity like cooking was something that was a lot more popular among women. Something like model making. Excuse me. Model making is not something that a lot of women pick up, right? It's something that either kids can do with their fathers or just simply older adult men do, right? What is something else that's usually... I think that's about it, yeah. I mean, you could also argue that gaming is something that a lot of people on the male side do. But hey, we always see exceptions, so yeah, I guess you could consider gaming. So we'll say gaming, cooking, and model making. What else do we have? Which are popular in your country? So which of these are popular in my country? Well, definitely say cooking. Wow, cooking is insane in my country. But what about watching TV as well? We'll definitely say do it yourself. A lot of people love doing things themselves, especially when they know that they can do it pretty good or in a pretty good fashion and also save money in the process. Me, myself included. I mean, I always try to find a solution for the problem before I get someone else to do it, unless I know that I'm gonna either get in trouble or cause even more damage. In that case, I'll just get someone else to do it. We'll also say that gaming is pretty big in where I live, because a lot of people like to, especially on the younger side, a lot of people like to take the stress away, or basically, and instead of using drugs or any of those things, people just go online, have some games, you know, have some fun. You get the idea. Just basically a good stress reliever. Oh, which are yeah, right, we already did that. So G, which do you personally enjoy? Alright, so this again will be up to you, but for me, I'll definitely say that gaming. I'm a pretty big nerd when it comes to games. Actually slowed down in the past, but gaming is something that I enjoy doing from time to time. And I think that's about it. Nothing else. Reading, yeah, you could argue reading. I like to read about self-development books. These are also really good. And yeah, that's about it. I literally do nothing of the other things. So yeah. So that was exercise A, you guys. Now let's move on. Here we have listen and match each speaker with one of the pictures. Alright, so let's take a look here. So we're going to be listening, right, to descriptions to these hobbies, and we're going to match each speaker with the letters on the picture, okay? So here we go. Have a listen.
122. Unit 9. Sports and Leisure. Lesson 1. Listening. Exercise B. Listen and match each speaker with one of the pictures.
I don't think you can really call this a hobby. I mean, everyone does it, or nearly everyone anyway. Some people spend 4 or 5 hours every day doing it, even when there's nothing they really want to watch.
This hobby is probably most popular with young boys and men. They like making aeroplanes or ships. I don't think many women enjoy doing this.
In the past, I think this was more of a woman's hobby. Perhaps it wasn't really a hobby at all, more like housework. Now people, men and women, think of it as a hobby, and there are lots of TV shows telling you how to make something delicious.
I guess this is a popular hobby, but mainly for older people. My mum and dad spend hours outside planting something or watering something. Personally, I think it's a bit boring.
This is a very popular outdoor hobby in lots of countries. I don't think it's really a sport. I mean, you can't win or lose. I think men enjoy this more than women. Fathers like to do it with their sons. I think a lot of men do it to get out of the house and escape from the family.
I think this is still a popular hobby, even if nowadays everything is digital and made easy. Lots of people still like to have a conventional camera and be creative with the pictures they take.
People collect all sorts of things. Stamps and coins are very common, but people collect unusual things like teddy bears. I heard a story about a man collecting car number plates.
This is a very creative hobby, and it's popular with boys and girls equally. At school, children start learning the piano or violin, and then as teenagers, the guitar or perhaps drums.
Alright, so we got all of them. So speaker 1 was C. Let me write that in capital. 2 was B. 3 was A. 4 was F. And 5 was I. 6 was G. 7 was D. And 8 was E. Okay? So that was exercise B, you guys. Now, let's move on. What do we have here? Listen to the introduction to a talk about hobbies. Alright. Right, so we're going to be listening to an introduction here to a talk about hobbies, and then we're going to answer these questions, right? So keep your eye. I'll actually play this twice for you guys. So get ready and have a listen.
123. Exercise C. Listen to the introduction to a talk about hobbies. In the modern age, people have a lot of free time or leisure time. That's time not working. Certainly more people have more free time than they did 100 years ago. Then only rich people had leisure time, while ordinary people worked very long hours. So how do people fill this leisure time? Well, there are hundreds of different ways. Many people like simple pleasures like reading or listening to music. And a lot of people watch television. Some people have a more specific hobby, and this is what I'm going to talk about. I see a hobby as a free time activity that's creative. I mean, a hobby is a free time activity that involves making something, or at least seeing some kind of end result.
Alright, I'll play that one more time for you guys, and then we'll answer the questions. Here we go.
100. Listen to the introduction to a talk about hobbies. In the modern age, people have a lot of free time or leisure time. That's time not working. Certainly more people have more free time than they did 100 years ago. Then only rich people had leisure time, while ordinary people worked very long hours. So how do people fill this leisure time? Well, there are hundreds of different ways. Many people like simple pleasures like reading or listening to music. And a lot of people watch television. Some people have a more specific hobby, and this is what I'm going to talk about. I see a hobby as a free time activity that's creative. I mean, a hobby is a free time activity that involves making something, or at least seeing some kind of end result.
Alright, so now let's get on with the questions. Here we have, what is leisure time? Well, based on the talk, we'll say that, excuse me, we'll say that it's time. Leisure time is simply time not working, right? Just a short answer. So what is leisure time? Time not working. B, who had leisure time 100 years ago? Well, I think it was rich people, actually. So rich people were the ones that had leisure time 100 years ago, compared to the ordinary people that had to work very long hours to provide and support their families, right? C, what simple pleasures does the lecturer mention? Okay, we'll say reading, right? Okay, not here, not mean it like that. What simple pleasures? So we'll say reading, definitely listening to music, and watching TV, right? TV. Let me write that in capital. There you go. Okay? 1 second. So reading, listening to music, and watching TV. How does the lecturer define hobby? We'll definitely say that a hobby is, well, he said that it's a free time activity that's creative and that also involves making something, right? So we'll say a hobby is a free time activity that's creative and that also involves making something. That's it, yeah, making something. Okay, so again, actually before we do that, let's go to question 2 here. What will the lecturer talk about now? Well, he said he was going to talk about how some people have a more specific hobby. So we'll say how some people have a more specific hobby. Okay? So again, one more time. What is leisure time? That is time not working. B, who had leisure time 100 years ago? Rich people. C. What simple pleasures does the lecturer mention? Well, he mentions reading, listening to music, and watching TV. And how does the lecturer define hobby? Well, a hobby is a free time that's creative and that also involves making something. Okay? 2. How will the lecturer talk about now, or what will, sorry? Well, he'll talk about how some people have a more specific hobby. Okay? So that was exercise C, you guys. Now let's move on. D, listen to the rest of the lecture. Alright, so now we're going to be listening to the rest of the lecture here. 2.5 minutes, so take out your, I don't know if you have this page on your, I think you do, yeah you do. So get ready because we're going to be writing our notes, and we're going to complete our notes with about model making and photography. Right, so now I know that the lecturer is going to talk about model making and photography, and we have to write 1 or 2 words in each space. So here we go. Get ready, and I'll be writing these down as we go.
124. Exercise D. Listen to the rest of the lecture.
Sometimes it's easy to see the result of a hobby. For example, in model making, there's a model at the end of the process, perhaps a plane or a ship. Model makers probably get more pleasure from making the model than they get from looking at the model or playing with it. That's why they soon start making another model. Photography is another very...
Alright, before we just move on, I want to do this. Actually, this is really annoying. Making the model is the creative process. Most people like to making the model. That's what we'll say. Making the model. Not looking, right, at it or playing with it, right? Let's keep going.
A creative hobby. In photography, there's a photograph, of course. But there's also a collection of favorite photographs. These are perhaps in an album, or nowadays stored on a computer.
Okay, well, photographs create a photograph, but also we'll say collection of photographs, right? Photographs. Actually, I think I wrote that wrong. We'll say collection of photographs. Okay, they put them in an album or keep them on we'll say computer. Yeah, that's what he said. So keep them on a computer. Well, what else? So, well, now we're gonna move on to making our own notes, right? So be careful. We're gonna make our own notes about the other hobbies. Okay, so here we have do-it-yourself, DIY, gardening, and collecting. So be careful and write the notes yourself. Here we go.
Technology, digital photography especially, is making photography seem easy. But many people still enjoy using a conventional camera and getting the best possible image. Now, DIY, do-it-yourself, is another popular hobby. Sometimes with DIY, there's a clear result. Perhaps people make a table or a cupboard. Most DIY, however, is simply repairing something. Repairing a broken door, doing some electrical work, or painting a room, for example. You're still making something, though. You're making the lights work, or you're making the room look nicer. Gardening is...
Alright, before we move on to gardening, so for some notes about do-it-yourself or DIY is, well, sometimes it's a clear result, right? So people could make a table or a cupboard, right? But most DIYs is actually, or DIY, is repairing stuff, right? So basically a broken door, some electrical work, or painting, right? So mostly, or most DIYs are based on fixing things and not necessarily making things from scratch. Okay? But hey, you gotta know that if it's only stupid if it doesn't work. So If it works, it works. So yeah, let's move on.
Similar to do-it-yourself in some ways, you make a space look more beautiful. It's also creative because you look after something and help it to grow. But what about collecting?
Now, before we move on to collecting, we'll talk quickly about gardening. So it's similar to DIY or do-it-yourself. You basically make a certain space look more beautiful, right? It's also a creative hobby because you're looking after something and helping it to grow. Okay, and yeah, so basically it's creative, right? Makes the space that you live in or the area that you garden in look more beautiful, and you help the plants grow and you look after them. Okay, now let's go to collecting.
Can we say that collecting is really a hobby? What are you making? Stamp collectors don't make stamps. Coin collectors don't make coins. But they do create something. They make a collection. They put their stamps or coins in an album and they organize it in alphabetical order by country.
Alright, so based on the audio here, we'll say that collecting is about making a collection, right? So putting stamps or coins or even shoes, things that basically anything that can be connected, right? You put them in either an album or organize them in a way that looks appealing to the people looking at your collection or you simply being proud of your collection, right? I've seen way too many people brag about their shoes, not to mention it in this recording. Anyway, I think that's about it. So let's move on to the next exercise. What do we have? Here we have exercise E, listen again. So let us take a look here. We have skills check. I'll get right to the listening, just give me a second. So skills check here is talking about recognizing change of subject. Well, when a speaker is talking, sometimes, you know, they tell us when they're about to change what they're talking about, right? The subject. So what does subject mean here? Subject here means what you or as a speaker, right, is talking about. Okay? So now I'm going to talk about, that means you're about to change the subject. That is a clear indication that you are about to switch what you're talking about, right? Now, you got to know that sometimes speakers, they do not tell us that they're about to change the subject, leaving a lot of people confused, right? So if I say, there are many different kinds of hobbies. For example, model making is very popular. Now, me as a speaker, I didn't specifically say that I'm about to change the subject, right? But some clues include, for example, right, model making. Now I'm talking about a different kind of those hobbies, right? One of the different kinds of these hobbies, right? One more example here. Many hobbies are creative. You make something in photography, or you make something in photography and you keep going. So many hobbies are creative. I didn't say that I was going to change the subject, but then I start talking about photography. That is a clear clue that I'm about to switch the subject. So that's photography. What about collecting things, right? That was what you just heard, and we're going to listen one more time again here, is what about dash? That means that is a clear sign that you're about to change the subject. Okay? Two more points to keep in mind, though, is that the speaker often says the new subject words more slowly or more loudly. So you'll often hear things like, there are many different kinds of hobbies. For example, right, either more slowly or more loudly or both. So they'll either raise their tone a little bit or they'll speak a little bit slower, just to emphasize on changing the subject. Okay? You can always probably tell when there's a pause after the subject's words, right? So, for example, model making is very popular, right? There is that pause, but it don't count on it. It might not always be there. Okay? So that was the skills check. Now let's listen again, and I want you to basically just let me know in the comments or wherever. It doesn't really matter. Put your hand up, or not your hand up. Just notice when the speaker changes subject, right? You have almost 2.5 minutes here, so please just concentrate and recognize when there's a change in subject. Here we go.
125. Exercise E. Listen again.
Sometimes it's easy to see the result of a hobby. For example, in model making, there's a model at the end of the process, perhaps a plane or a ship. Model makers probably get more pleasure from making the model than they get from looking at the model or playing with it. That's why they soon start making another model. Photography is another very creative hobby. In photography, there's a photograph, of course, but there's also a collection of favourite photographs. These are perhaps in an album, or nowadays stored on a computer. Technology, digital photography especially, is making photography seem easy. But many people still enjoy using a conventional camera and getting the best possible image. Now, DIY, do-it-yourself, is another popular hobby. Sometimes with DIY there's a clear result. Perhaps people make a table or a cupboard. Most DIY, however, is simply repairing something. Repairing a broken door, doing some electrical work, or painting a room, for example. You're still making something, though. You're making the lights work, or you're making the room look nicer. Gardening is similar to do-it-yourself in some ways. You make a space look more beautiful. It's also creative because you look after something and help it to grow. But what about collecting? Can we say that collecting is really a hobby? What are you making? Stamp collectors don't make stamps. Coin collectors don't make coins. But they do create something. They make a collection. They put their stamps or coins in an album and they organize it in alphabetical order by country.
Alright, so that was an interesting audio. Now let's move on. What do we have here? I think that's about it. So I want you guys, before we move on, is think of some more creative hobbies, right? Such as cooking, for example. And what do you make in each case? Write about it. Do some research on it. You can even write your own notes on your own experiences about these creative hobbies that you have. Okay? So I think that's about it for listening. Now let's move on to speaking. Alright, you guys, so now let's move on to lesson 2, speaking. Let's hop right in. Here we have exercise A. Look at the pictures on page 50 again and talk in pairs. What do people enjoy about each activity? Alright, so what I want you guys to do is go back to listening for a second here and take a look at these pictures and start talking, right? If you're in pairs or in class, go one by one and start talking about what is it that people enjoy about these activities. Photography, for example, right? Doing it yourself, playing musical instruments, okay? So talk about these activities and why people seem to enjoy them, right? Something like cooking, for example, we can say cooking is relaxing. It makes people happy and it makes people think more about what they eat, right? Talk in this way and basically show us why people enjoy these activities or enjoy doing these activities, right? So now let's move on to exercise B. Look at sentences A, D below and answer the questions. A. When I play piano, it makes people happy. B. I play computer games for hours. It makes my mom really angry. C, the new color made the room look nicer. D, skateboarding for a few hours makes me feel good. Right, So now let's answer the questions. What do all the sentences have in common? And that is where we transition from this exercise to skills check 1. Right. So here we have in skills check 1 the uses of make, right? So the common structure in a sentence when using the word make is make plus object plus an adjective, right? So for example, it makes people happy, right? You have it as the subject, make or makes, both are correct. Depends just on how you use it or where its place is in the sentence. Object, people, adjective, happy, right? So if it's singular, if the subject is singular, make, you add an S to make. If it's in plural, you get rid of the S. So love stories make me sad, okay? Now, you gotta know that there's another common structure with the word make, and that is make plus object plus verb, right? But you gotta know is that is that the second verb is the infinitive without to, right? So for example, fishing makes me relax. Comedy films make people laugh, okay? So now let's go back here. So what do all the sentences have in common? What do you guys think? Well, first of all, we gotta know that all of these sentences have the verb make. And you gotta differentiate here that make it's not the same basic meaning as in make a cake. No, it doesn't mean create here. Make does not mean create, as in make a cake, right? You get the idea, right? So this is different. So again, what do all of these sentences have in common? They all have they all contain the verb make. Okay. How are the sentences A and B different from sentences C and D? Well, sentences A and B, they relate to the first two parts of the skills check here, right? So make plus object plus adjective, right? And you gotta know that sentences C and D relate to the second half of skills check, right? And now, let me actually, before we move on, let me give you a sentence. So you'll hear a lot of new English students say it makes her to feel sad, right? So they usually add that to, and that is a common student error, and you should, when writing things down, just cross out the word to. So don't say it. So instead of saying it makes her to feel sad, you should say it makes her feel sad. There is no reason whatsoever to add to here. Okay? Now let's go to exercise C. Look at the picture. Let me actually open this. Okay, so what do we have here? Answer the questions with a partner. Okay, so what is the hobby here based on the picture? What do you guys think? Well, this looks like it's fishing, right? What do you know about this hobby? Well, personally, I don't know much. Someone else probably will from you guys, but all I know is that you basically sit down, you just try your best to basically find fish. I think so. I really don't know about this. Do you know any special vocabulary for the hobby? Well, I don't, but here you can clearly see some of the more complex vocabulary, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. So reel, hook, net, I think one more would be rod, and probably bait. Okay? So now we're gonna use these words and basically add the words in the box to the correct place in the world map here. Okay? Or the word map, sorry. So here we have fishing, right? For equipment, you need rod, reel, hook, net, and we'll say bait. Okay? Places, well, this one's pretty simple. You can fish in the sea, river, or lake, right? For verbs, you can say reel in, catch, release, and we can also say cast. So we'll say cast. Okay? So one more time, for the equipment used in fishing, we have rod, reel, hook, net, bait. For places to go fishing, we have sea, river, and lake. And what about the verbs? Well, cast, reel in, catch, and release. Alright, so now let's move on to the next exercise. What do we have? Okay, listen to the man talking about his hobby. Alright, so now we're gonna actually listen to the guy. Oh wow, that is 4 minutes long. Guys, be ready, right? So we're gonna be listening to a man talking about his hobby, which is gonna be fishing, right? And what I want you guys to do is, because I'm only gonna play this once, that is way too long. So tick the words in the word map when you hear them. So hearing these words, tick each one as you hear them along, okay? And we're going to be answering these questions in pairs. So take out your notes, or take out a sticky note or whatever, and start writing notes down. And just tick these words as you go along. So here we go.
126. Lesson 2. Speaking. Exercise D. Listen to the man talking about his hobby.
OK, I'm going to give you my talk about fishing. Fishing is my favourite activity. It's my hobby. I go fishing every week. In summer, I go 2 or 3 times a week. I started when I was 6 years old with my father. I say fishing because that's a word you all know, but really it's called angling. Fishing is catching fish, any kind of catching fish. That can be large commercial fishing with very big nets, for example. Angling is fishing as a leisure activity or as a hobby. You spell that A-N-G-L-I-N-G. OK, so why do I like angling? It makes me happy, and it makes me feel good. It makes me relax. Fishing in a lake or a river is very relaxing. Fishing in the sea is more exciting. I really enjoy all types. Angling isn't a very expensive hobby, but you need various equipment. Of course, you need a rod, perhaps 2 or 3 rods. At the moment, I have 7 rods. I buy a new rod every year. In the picture, you can see my rod for river fishing. I didn't bring a rod to show you because they're too big to take on the bus. OK, on the rod is the reel. I have a reel here for you to see. It's like a wheel. You turn it to make the line go out or to pull the line back in. I can put different reels on different rods. I have 5 different reels now. This is just one of them. Of course, next you must have the hooks if you want to catch a fish. I have a few hooks here to show you. You can see they're different shapes and different sizes. The big hook is for sea fishing, perhaps to catch a tuna or even a shark. Finally, you need bait. I have to buy bait every month. I have some bait to show you in this tin. Let me just open it. These are maggots. That's M-A-G-G-O-T-S. They're like little worms. Some people don't like them. There are other things we use as bait, for instance small insects, and sometimes just bread. With sea fishing, it's common to use a small fish as bait. Sometimes we throw fish into the sea to make the bigger fish come to the boat. Now, in river fishing, I often use a fly. That's not a real fly. It's a fly made of metal. It has bright colours, and river fish like these colours. Here are some flies. You can pass them around. With river angling, you also need a net. When you catch a fish, you take it off the hook and put it in the net in the river. At the end of the day, you release the fish back into the water. Sometimes with sea fishing, I keep the fish to eat. I take a very big fish to a local restaurant. So to summarise, I enjoy angling because I find it very relaxing and exciting. I love casting the line and waiting. Then, when I feel a fish, it's very exciting. For me, I'm happiest when I'm reeling in a big fish.
Alright, so that was a really interesting audio. So we got all of the words here. I'm pretty sure you guys heard all of them. So now let's go to the questions here. So what is angling, you guys? Well, based on the audio, it's another word for fishing, or fishing as a leisure activity, right? So what is angling? Angling is another word for fishing, basically. Why didn't the student bring a rod to show the class? Well, that is because his rods are simply too big, right? C. What two types of fish does he mention? Well, he mentions tuna and shark, two big sea fish. Okay? What different types of bait does he mention? He mentions quite a few, so we have maggots, insects, bread, small fish, and metal flies, the one that he uses a lot, which is metal flies. Okay? What does he do with the fish he catches? Well, he either releases them, eats them, takes bigger fish to a local restaurant. Okay? And for F, what can you see in the pictures below? What is each for? Well, I don't see any pictures here. But I'm guessing based on this picture here, we can see, well, we have a hook, and a hook is for catching the fish, obviously, a net to keep the fish in, maggots, that is bait to attract the fish, a reel to turn and pull or reel in a fish, and a fly, which is to basically another form of bait to attract the fish. Okay, so that was exercise D, you guys. Now let's go to skills check 2 here before we move on. So we have specialist vocabulary. So when you give a talk, right, or have a tutorial, you're gonna need something called specialist vocabulary. Now what is that? Well, these are words and phrases particular to your area of interest or something that you're talking about. If your area of interest, or basically that thing that you're talking about, the topic that you're going to be talking about, is something that you're interested in, you'll find yourself already familiar with most of these specialist vocab, right? But if you're someone like me, for example, that gives talks about a lot of things that he's not interested in, like, for example, I don't know, geology, for example, if we're talking about climate change, I don't necessarily hate it, I'm just not interested in it, right? So whenever I have to give a talk, I have to look up these specialist words or specialist phrases, right? They're all related to areas of interest. And as you can clearly see here, we have angling, which is fishing, but I bet you did not know that, right? A rod, I did not know what a rod is until now. Bait, I think all of us know what bait is. And other things like maggots, right? A net, a hook, a reel, a fly. You get the idea. So all of these are called specialist phrases or specialist words. Okay? So find them in a dictionary. You'll probably find all of them in a dictionary, and check your pronunciation, and if you have to, then explain what they mean, okay, when talking. Okay? So again, always practice the specialist vocab before moving in to give a talk. Okay? Examples include angling, it's like a dash, and you use it to. All of these are ways that you can explain what the words mean. Okay? You could also, something to add, is bring small objects to show during your talk. Wow, that accent really messed me up. So bring small objects to show during your talk. Okay? So again, if your area of interest allows for it, obviously you could bring things to both keep the audience interested and basically explaining things that we don't see too often as people that don't know much about that area of interest. Okay? Now, let's move on to giving a talk, skills check 3. So, you always want to plan a talk, right? Here we have something called word maps, like the one that we just finished. You can find them on page 52. Although I'm not a big fan of them, they are a really, really good way for some people to remember what they're going to say and what their points are. Okay? Well, one good way is to also find pictures of objects and remember the some words by using said objects. Okay? You could also think of possible questions from other students. Can you answer all of them? Well, when given a talk, you gotta understand that there might be the possibility that someone will either interrupt or after you're done will ask you questions about your topic. So always be prepared for said questions. Okay? Now, again, it wouldn't be a speaking section if we didn't prepare to give a talk, right? This time, we're gonna prepare our favorite hobby or interest, right? So plan a talk of about 2 minutes, 1.5 if you're really not in the mood, but hey, you gotta do it, okay? So talk about your favorite hobby or something that's interesting to you, okay? Yeah, and I think that's about it. So now let's move on, you guys. Alright, you guys, so now let's move on to lesson 3, vocabulary and pronunciation. Here we have exercise A. Study these sentences 1 to 4 in the blue box. So we have, I like making models. Can I make a suggestion? He made a hole in the wood. It makes me happy. And the music makes me want to dance. Well, sorry, 1 to 5, not 1 to 4. So let me actually open this here. I think you guys should be able to see it now. Yep. So again, one more time. We have, I like making models. Can I make a suggestion? He made a hole in the wood. It makes me happy, and the music makes me want to dance. Okay. So, how are these sentences below the same, you guys? What do you think the similarities between each one is? That's correct. Well, they all contain the verb make. Remember, we talked about make a little bit, so they all contain the verb make, right? And how are they different, right? Well, make here has a different meaning in each sentence. So if I say I like making models, or compared to can I make a suggestion, make here is not the same as make there. And I'll elaborate a little bit more in a second. Okay? So, how are they different? That's about it. So now let's go to the word map here. Here we have the different uses of make. Okay? So we have create a physical object, make a model, or even make a cake, right? This is from the green box here. So make a cake. Another use of make is doing an action or causing a change, such as make a hole or make a mistake, right? One more use for make is saying something. So for example, making a suggestion or make a statement, right? All of these are uses of make. We have 2 more. So we can use make plus an object and an adjective, right? So it comes out like this. Make somebody happy. Make somebody sad, right? One more is make plus object and the verb instead of an adjective, right? So make somebody cry. Make somebody laugh, right? So all of these are the different uses of make. Now let's go back and implement these uses to the third question here. What is the meaning of make in each case? So I like making models. Well, you can see or tell that here he's talking about a physical object. So in this case, it's a model, right? So it's the first use here. So creating a physical object. Okay? So here, make is used as a way to create a physical object. Make a model, make a cake. Okay? let's go to number 2. Can I make a suggestion? Here, it's the use of saying something, right? So make a suggestion, make a statement, okay? So that is the second use, and that is what it means in the second question. Here, make means to say something, okay? He made a hole in the wood. So this make here means to do an action or simply to cause a change. So for example, make a hole or make a mistake, okay? So he made a hole, this is an action, okay? 4, it makes me happy. Well, here it simply means to be happy, right? So here we have make plus the object and the adjective. So make somebody happy, make somebody sad. So in this case, it makes me happy, okay? And the final one, number 5, this music makes me want to dance. And again, this is the last one. Oh, and I wrote an extra T. Make plus object plus the verb. So for example, make somebody cry, make somebody laugh. Okay, so that's number 5. This music makes me want to dance. Okay, now let's move on. Circle the correct phrases below and correct the verbs in the wrong phrases. Okay, let's take a look at this. So here we have tick the correct phrases below and correct the verbs in the wrong phrases. All right. So 1 is make a decision, that's correct. Make changes, that's also correct. Make a photo, that is not correct. Okay, so we're gonna have to correct this one. So we'll say take a photo, right? I never say make a photo. Have you ever gone to a photographer and said, hey, can you make a photo of me? No, because it's wrong. You say take a photo. Okay, so take a photo. Make progress, right? Make your homework, that is wrong. And finally, make money. Make money is correct, but make your homework is wrong. It's actually do your homework, okay? I never say I'm gonna make my homework. I'm gonna do my homework, okay? So again, make a decision, make changes, take a photo, make progress, do your homework, and make money, okay? Now let's move on. Here we have exercise B. Study the sentences in the yellow box and answer the questions in pairs. Okay, so I think this one is... Actually, let's just keep going and then I'll say what I was going to say. So, I found it on my desk. Many graduates can't find jobs, and I found the talk very interesting. Okay, now let's answer these questions here. How are the sentences the same? Okay, so we'll say they all contain the word find, right? Just like make above. Here we have find in the past, found, find, and again found, okay? So just like make, it's in all the sentences, okay? How are they different? Again, well, find has a different meaning in each sentence here, okay? What is the meaning of find in each case? Alright, so let's take sentence A. I found it on my desk. Well, found here means that basically it refers to finding something that had been lost, right? So I found it on my desk, implying that I was looking for it, okay? And B, many graduates can't find jobs. Well, find here means that graduates are struggling to get a job, okay? So find here implies that graduates are struggling to get a job, okay? And we have C, I found the talk very interesting. Well, found here means basically to have a particular feeling or opinion about something, right? So he, in this case, or she, found the talk very interesting, right? So a particular feeling or opinion about something. In this case, the talk. Okay? Now let's go to exercise C. study the phrases in box A. Let's take a look here. Here we have use each underlined word to complete the phrases in box B. Alright, so here we have some underlined phrases, right, or underlined words, and we're going to complete the phrases with them, right? So we have book, fly, play, left, and talk. So kill a, we'll say kill a fly, right? Kill a fly. I left, we'll say left early, okay? Left over here. I left early. Dash about the weather, we'll say talk about the weather. Dash a table at the restaurant, we'll say book a table at the restaurant. And finally, we'll say see a play at the theater. Okay? Now let's read the two phrases in each box. So box A, we have read a book, fly to New York, play a game, turn left here, and give a talk. B, kill a fly, I left early, talk about the weather, book a table at the restaurant or at a restaurant, and see a play at the theater. Okay? So, let's answer the questions here for C2. What part of speech is each underlined word in box A? Well, for the first one, we have read a book. A book in this case is a noun, right? Fly to New York. Fly here is obviously a verb. Play a game, that's also a verb, right? Left here is actually an adverb, okay? And talk is a noun. But now let's go to the second box, box B here. You'll notice that, actually give me a second. Book, where was book? Yeah, so number 4, dash, book a table at a restaurant. Here, book is not a noun, but rather a verb. See? So book here, as in read a book, right? A book, something that you can hold and read. While here, booking means to set an appointment at a restaurant for your table. Okay? So one's a noun and one's a verb. Okay? Fly. So kill a fly. Fly is a noun, right? What else? We have play. See a play at the theater. Well, play in this case is also a noun. I left early. Left here is a verb, okay? And talk about the weather, again, talk is a verb, okay? So yeah, that's about it. What are the different meanings of the pairs of words? Well, you guys should know these already, but we'll say them quickly. Read a book here, like I said, means a book, something that's physical that you hold and read, while book here means to simply schedule an appointment at a specific place, especially a restaurant, right? Fly to New York, here fly is a verb, right? As in to book a flight to New York, okay? And fly, while kill a fly here simply means kill a fly as a noun, okay? Play a game. Play a game, here play is a verb, you're doing something, playing a game. While see a play is, I'm pretty sure all you guys know what a play is, a play at the theater. When you watch a play or people perform at a play, in a play at the theater. Okay? Turn left here. Well, turn left here, it's either left or right. While I left early, here that's a verb, because I left as in I left, basically. I just went away, okay? I left the place, I left this, I left that, okay? And finally, we have give a talk, right? Give a talk, give a speech, so basically another word for a speech. While talk about the weather here means it's simply a verb, talking about the weather, right? I'm about to talk about the weather, okay? So that was exercise C. Now let's move on. Here we have exercise D, read skills check 1. What are the 2 words in the spaces in the word column? Alright, so let's go to skills check 1 and then we'll move on. So Words with more than one meaning. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar now with words with more than one meaning. You gotta understand that many words in English have two or even more common meanings. The two words are often different parts of speech, right? So, dash, opposite of right, or went away from a place. What do you guys think the word here is? Well, it's either left, right? Because that's the first meaning for it is opposite of right, and two, it means to leave or went away from a place. So left is the correct answer here. Two, it's a method of transport, and it's also to practice a sport. Well, here we'll say train, right? Because train is a method of transport, and it also means to practice a sport. So that, you guys, is what it means when a word has two meanings, right? It's used in different places or different parts of the speech, okay? So you gotta know these different meanings for each word. So some common verbs like make, find, take have several different meanings that we talked about. We talked about the different meanings for make and find, okay? If a sentence does not make sense to you, well, that's going to happen a lot of the time if you don't know all the different meanings for the same words, right? Because some words, like we said, have two or more meanings. You got to think, do any of the words have a different meaning in this context? Always think about the context in itself and not just the word, okay? And always, again, like always, think about ways to organize your vocabulary notebook when you record books or words with different meanings, right? Always got to be careful when writing the meanings down, because one word do not have a fixed meaning. Especially, or most words, not all words, but you get the idea. Style your notebook in a way where you can easily access the different meanings for words. Okay? So now let's go to exercise D here. What are the two words in the spaces in the word column? Well, we already said that. Left, opposite of right, went away from a place, and train, method of transport, and practice sport. Study the words in the box. Think of one meaning for each word. So we have orange, lie, land, right, last, and water. Okay, so orange, we'll say that it's a color, right? The color orange. And orange could also be considered a fruit, right? Noun, fruit, and orange is a color, right? And what else? What part? Lie. What about lie? Well, lie here could mean two things. Opposite of stand, right? So you either stand or lie, or lie as in lying. So something is not true. You're not telling the truth. So two meanings, again. Lie as a verb, and lie as in something's not true, like a noun. Okay? And then we have land. Well, land could mean that you're landing in a country from traveling, right? Or land as in a ground that is owned, right? Earth, land, basically. Okay? What else? We have right. Okay. So right could be the opposite of wrong, right? So not wrong. And right as in not left, you guys, right? So either right or left, or right as in right, I'm right and you're wrong. Okay? Then we have last. Last here is pretty simple. So either you have last as in obviously the opposite of first, so I came last, or last and go on for a very long time. Alright? Then we have water. Well, we could say water as in a liquid, right? Water. And water as in a verb, so give water to flowers. So different meanings. Some could come in as nouns, verbs, adjectives, etc. You get the idea. You gotta understand the different meanings. Okay? So I think I did all of these without noticing. So think of one meaning in each word. Already did that. What part of the speech is the word with that meaning? We said it was either a noun, a verb, and I said some of them. Think of another meaning or find one in your dictionary. Did that. And what part of speech is the word with the second meaning? Did that as well. Now let's go to exercise E here. Actually, let's go to skills check 2 first. So we have adjectives ending in in or an ing or ed. So there are many adjectives in English with 2 endings. So you either have ing or ed. When using an adjective plus ing, we're usually describing a thing or person, right? But when we add ed to an adjective, we're describing emotion or feeling. For example, a boring lesson, an interesting man, right? Well, here we're describing something. So in this case, the lesson or a person, so an interesting man. I could also say, I wasn't interested in it. We were very bored. What does that mean? It means that we're describing emotion or a feeling. I wasn't interested in it, right? Or we were very bored. So yeah, describing a feeling. So again, one more time, when using adjectives plus ed, we're talking about feelings. But when we're using ing, we're talking about or describing a thing or person. Okay? Let me open exercise in here. So we have study sentences A and B below. So we have history is a very interesting subject. B, I'm very interested in history. Okay, so we have 1. What is the difference between the underlined adjective? Well, we already said. The first interesting here, we're talking about simply talking about describing a thing or a person. So in this case, it's a thing, so it's the subject itself, right? 2, or B, I'm very interested in history. Well, here we're describing a feeling about me specifically, right? So I'm very interested. So these are the 2 different meanings. What else? Read skills check 2 and right, let me open it one more time because what do we have? Circle the correct word in each sentence. Okay, so A, we have Jenny was surprised or surprising to see her old friend at the door. Yes, we'll say surprised, ed. We're expressing a feeling. B, they said there was a bomb. It was a very frightening or frightened experience. We'll say frightening experience. That was an exciting match. We'll say exciting. Most students were satisfied or satisfying with their exam results. Were satisfied. I went to see the Red Hot Chili Peppers last week. They were amazed or amazing. We'll say amazing. Okay, so one more time. Surprised, frightening, exciting, satisfied, and amazing. Okay? Now let's move on. Right, so here we have exercise F. Say the words in the box below with a partner. Okay, let me actually open this. This is going to be sort of a pronunciation check here. So say the words in the box below with a partner. So we have favorite, gardening, comfortable, vegetable, chocolate, and different. Now, I want you guys to listen one more time. You're going to listen to a speaker saying these words, and I want you guys to count the syllables, okay?
128. Lesson 3. Vocabulary and Pronunciation. Exercise F1. Listen and count the syllables.
Favorite. Gardening. Comfortable. Vegetable. Chocolate. Different.
Alright, so just listening to the words, you can tell that favorite has 1 syllable, favorite. Gardening also has 1 syllable, right? Comfortable has 2 syllables, that's correct. Vegetable also has 2 syllables. Chocolate, again, 1 syllable. And different also has 1 syllable. Okay, so that was quickly exercise. That was just exercise F, basically. Really simple. What else do we have? How many syllable practice having them? Let us check here. What do we have? We have how many syllables do each of the ed adjectives below have? Practice saying them. So we have bored, we'll just add ed, frightened, surprised, and amazed. Okay, so we have, okay, wow. I did not mean to do it like that. We're supposed to write the number of syllables here and not add ed. That is my bad. So listen and check. We're going to listen to these and we'll see how many syllables we can count. Alright, so here we go.
130. Exercise F5. Listen and check. Then practice saying these adjectives.
Bored, frightened, surprised, amazed.
Alright, so based on the pronunciation of the speaker, we can say that bored has 1 syllable, frightened has 2, surprised has 2, and amazed also has 2 syllables. Okay, so that was, I think that's about it. So that was lesson 3, you guys. Now let's move on. Alright, you guys, so now let's move on to lesson 4, reading. Here we have exercise A. Prepare to read the text on the opposite page. Read the heading and the subheading under it, then take a look at the pictures. So here we have WDYTOTTAGAH and question mark. So what does that stand for? Well, it stands for, why don't you turn off the television and get a hobby? Alright, so based on some of the pictures here, it looks like it's comparing some of the more popular hobbies that people used to have. Okay, so let me open exercise B now, see what we got here. We have, can you remember each word for the letters in the main heading? Wow, you're gonna put me on the spot like that, so we'll say, why don't you turn off the television or TV and get a hobby? Wow, can't believe I got that right. So why don't you turn off the TV and get a hobby? Okay, what do you think the text will be about? Well, based on what we just read and some of the pictures, we'll definitely say popular hobbies. So why do people like watching television? Nope. Different types of television program or programs? Nope. It's popular hobbies. Okay, so let's read the introduction and check our answers. So television is the most popular recreational activity in almost every country in the world. Hundreds of millions of people come home from a day at work or school and turn on the TV. But TV is not the only option. Some people have a hobby. They come home and enjoy making, collecting, or looking after things. This month, Amanda Wells looks at some popular hobbies and talks about some hobbyists. Alright, so I think our answer is correct. Popular hobbies is the correct one. The 2 words in the box are opposites. Discuss what they mean. So we have professional and amateur. What do you guys think the difference is? Well, a professional is someone that does something as a job, right? He or she is paid to do it, right? While an amateur is someone that does something for enjoyment, right? Just purely for enjoyment. He or she is not paid at all to do it. Okay, so that was B4. now let's move on. Here we have close the book and talk in groups of 4. Right, so this will depend on you as a student. I want you guys to talk together if you can. If you're on your own, then hey, talk to me, talk to the screen. So, 1, how many hours of television do you watch in a week? How many hours of television do you guys watch in a week? Answer honestly. For me, personally, I'll have to say none. Because I simply don't watch television, right? I am someone that stopped watching TV a couple of years ago, and I just think TV is useless now that we have the internet, and just everything's so much better on the internet. So, 2, do you only watch programs you know and like, or do you just watch what is on? Well, with TVs, I'll definitely say that when I used to watch, I only watched the things that I like. Although I do know a lot of people that just open and watch it for like whatever. They just sit on the couch and they just forget whatever they're watching, and they're using it as some background noise, or basically just watching it as is. They don't care about what is on. So yeah, I do know both people. It's just that for me personally, I would always watch programs that I know and like, not just anything that is on. Okay? And 3, do you ever watch television instead of doing a hobby or playing sport? Well, yes. Yes, I think a lot of people will answer yes to that question. Television, it can be a very good time distracting machine. So you got to be careful, because it will suck up your time if you go on or watch it for too long. So yes, I'd say that when I used to watch television, it used to suck up most of my time. Anyway, now let's move on to exercise D. Again, work in groups of 4 if you're in class. Choose one hobby from each of the text. So now we'll have to read the text here. So we're going to read about the different hobbies, and then we're going to choose one and write some notes about it. Okay? So here we go. At one time, doing it yourself was normal. People painted rooms, built furniture, and repaired their cars. Then people started to earn more money. They started to pay professionals to do jobs around the house. After the Second World War, things changed again. Most people did not have much money, and they did things themselves. In 1955, the first do-it-yourself magazine appeared in Britain, and in the early 60s, the first DIY program appeared on British TV. DIY is now very common, but many people only do it because they have no option. I can't afford to pay someone. It's too expensive, Carol told me, so I do it myself. I don't like it though. I make lots of mistakes. However, Carol's husband, Jimmy, enjoys DIY. I find it very satisfying, he said. It makes me feel good. Gardening started soon after agriculture. Ancient civilizations in Egypt, Greece, and Rome, for example, looked after gardens as well as fields of crops. Gardening and agriculture are very similar. You put something in the ground and it grows. However, there is a big difference. People grow crops because it is a necessity, but they grow and look after flowers for pleasure. Rich people in Britain had gardens a long time ago, but in the 1800s, ordinary people also started to have a small piece of ground next to their house. Gardening became a national hobby. Several magazines appeared in the 1820s. I love gardening because it's relaxing, says Jill, a keen amateur gardener. When I'm in my garden, I don't think about work or problems. Nowadays, gardening is one of the most popular hobbies in the world. The first stamp appeared in Britain in 1840. It was called the penny black, because it was black and it cost 1 penny. Only 12 years later, the first magazine for stamp collectors appeared. At first, most collectors were children, but soon, adults also started collecting. Stamps spread around the world. Stamp collecting spread, nowadays. Nowadays, there are over 200 million stamp collectors worldwide. I collect stamps because they are beautiful, says Tom. I also learn a lot about the world. I don't buy rare stamps, though. I'm not rich enough. These days, a penny black sells for about £2,000. A Frenchman called Niepce probably took the first photograph in June 1827. It was a picture from his window, and the process took around 8 hours. The word photography appeared in around 1839. The Greek word photo means light, and graph means writing. At first, photography was too expensive for most people, but it still became a common hobby. A popular magazine, Amateur Photographer, first appeared in 1884. Nowadays, almost everyone has a camera, and it is much easier to take good pictures. I always carry my digital camera, Andre told me. I take hundreds of pictures. Photographs help me remember places and people. I find it fascinating. Alright, so we're gonna pick one hobby. So we'll probably, personally, I'd like to pick, I'll say gardening, right? Because I think gardening is pretty interesting, right? So hobby, we'll say gardening. Its history, we'll say that it started soon after agriculture, and it was in Egypt, Greece, Rome, etc. It was, where was it? Well, yeah, Egypt, Greece, Rome, etc. First magazine was, I think it was in 1820, if I'm not mistaken. 1820. Yes, it was in 1820. Hobbyists worldwide will say because it was one of the most popular hobbies. So gardening was one of the most popular hobbies. And why did they do it? Well, simply because it's relaxing, right? You could choose your own hobby from the text and write your own notes. Okay? Right, so here we have skills check, reasons, and concessions. So you guys got to know that you will read more quickly if you recognize the difference between reasons and concessions. Understand that the words because and so give reasons. So for example, if I say DIY, which is do it yourself by the way, is now very common. But some people only do it because they have no option, right? Because here is used as a reason. Okay? It's too expensive, Carol told me, so I do it myself. That's a reason as well. So again, notice that because and so give specific reasons. Okay? Now notice how the words but and though make concessions. DIY is now very common, but some people only do it because but. So here, that's a concession. Okay? So, Carol told me, so I do it myself. I don't like it though. I make lots of mistakes. Though here is used as a concession as well. So, I do it myself. I don't like it though. I make lots of mistakes. Okay? That was a quick difference between reasons and concessions, and the 4 words, and how you can read more quickly if you recognize the difference between reasons and concessions. And basically the rest of these are basically you comparing notes with your friends. So if you're in class, compare the notes and see what each of you wrote if you guys wrote the same hobby. Okay? And yeah, that's about it. Now let's move on to writing and grammar, you guys. Alright, you guys, so now let's move on to Lesson 5, Writing and Grammar. Here we have Exercise A. Look at sentences A and B below. What is the difference between the grammatical forms? So we have A, photography makes me happy, and B, these old photographs make me think of my grandfather. Well, what is the difference? We'll say the similarities between the two first. So obviously we have make in both sentences. Photography makes me happy, and these old photographs make me think of my grandfather. Right? The difference is obviously what make means in each case. So for make, we used in sentence A, we used make with an object and an adjective, while in sentence B, we used make with object and a verb. Okay? So, now let's go to exercise B, answer the questions in pairs. Well, these are just simple questions that you should answer on your own. What makes you happy, sad, angry, nervous, and excited? And what makes you laugh, cry, and feel good? And try to use words such as make, right? You could say, I don't know, maybe school makes me sad, for example. Food makes me happy, right? Skydiving makes me nervous. Okay? So these are some examples. I won't go into too much detail. And then we have exercise C. Read the email, write the words and phrases in the box in the correct space. Okay, so let me open this so you guys can get a better view. We have I guess, well, also, though, and to. So this is an email, and as we're reading it, we're going to be adding these words and phrases in the correct space. Okay, so here we go. Hi again, Greg. In your last email, you asked me about my hobbies and interests. Dash, I play football and basketball. Well, we'll say, well. Okay? Well, actually, let me write that in capital. So, well, I play football and basketball. But I, dash, really enjoy a traditional we'll just say, okay, but I also really enjoy a traditional Spanish sport called pelota. Dash, it's a bit like squash. We'll say I guess it's a bit like squash. I go to the cinema every 2 or 3 weeks, and I like renting DVDs to watch at home. What do we have? What are our options? We'll say to. T-O-O. We'll talk about to in a little bit. Just give me a second. I don't watch TV or play computer games very often. My favorite hobby is rock climbing. And we have, we'll say though. So, though I go every week in summer. Well, let me say it in a different way. My favorite hobby is rock climbing, though. I go every week in summer. It's exciting and sometimes quite dangerous. Makes me feel free. I forget about everything else. Tell me about your hobbies and interests. Best wishes, Bruno. Okay, so that was the email. So again, we have well, also, I guess, to, and though. Now, let's move on. Anything else here? Nope. Okay, so we have exercise D. Study the sentences from Bruno's email. What do they have in common? Well, before we answer that, we're going to have to go down here to skills check using to and also. So you guys got to know that we can add information with the words to, as in T-O-O, and also. So notice the position of each word in these examples. So we have I'm interested in reading too, right? I'm also interested in reading. I like tennis too. I also like tennis. I'm making a model at the moment too. I'm also making a model at the moment. So you can add information using the words to and also based on the position of each word or how you'd like to say the word. Okay? So now let's go here. What do they have in common? I play football and basketball, but I also really enjoy a traditional Spanish sport called pelota. Well, here he used also. Bruno used also to add more information, right? I go to the cinema every 2 or 3 weeks, and I like renting DVDs to watch at home too. Well, the difference is he used also in the first sentence, right? And he used to in the second one. Okay? So I think that's about it. So he was basically using to and also, common, and differences he was also using also and to. Okay? Now let's go to 4. So D4, rewrite the sentences below using also. So now we're going to be rewriting these sentences using only also. Justin plays the guitar, the piano, and the saxophone. He's a very good singer too. Okay, so if we're going to write it in with also, we'll probably say Justin plays the guitar. Let me actually write that down. Justin plays the guitar the piano and the saxophone, right? Full stop, and we'll also say he's also a very good singer, right? So it's basically the exact same meaning, I just use also instead of to. So Justin plays the guitar, the piano, and the saxophone. He's also, we'll say, also a very good singer, instead of saying he's a very good singer too. B, we visited Japan and South Korea. We spent a night in Singapore too. I'll say we visited Japan and South Korea. Let me add an A here. Japan and South Korea. We also spent a night in let me write that in capital, Singapore. That's about it, yeah. So we visited Japan and South Korea. We also spent a night in Singapore. So used also instead of to. Okay? So one more time, Justin plays the guitar, the piano, and the saxophone. He's also a very good singer. B, we visited Japan and South Korea. We also spent a night in Singapore. Okay? That was it. Now let's go to 5, because this wouldn't be a writing lesson without you guys having to write an email or essay. So I want you guys to write an email to Bruno. You guys remember Bruno, right? About your own hobbies and interests. I want you guys to write about, your general interests, things that, have any interest from you. You could also talk about one specific hobby, something that you really enjoy. And you could also talk about that one hobby that you really enjoy and how it makes you feel and why do you do it. Okay? So write an email and let's move on. Alright, you guys, so now let's move on to Lesson 6, Writing and Grammar, the final 2 pages of this unit here. We have Exercise A. Look at the pictures. So here we have 4 different pictures. And what is the main problem in each situation? So let me open this exercise here. We have it's too hot, it's too loud, it's too big, and it's too high. So picture A, what do you guys think it is? That's correct. It's too high. The ball or balloon is too high for the girl. So we'll say it's too high will be A. Okay? And B looks like it's too big, right? So B will be too big. It's too loud. It seems that the music is too loud. So we'll say D is too loud. And finally, it's too hot. So C will be the correct one. Actually, let me write that in capital. Write that one in capital as well. Okay, so it's too hot, it's too loud, it's too big, and it's too high. Now, let me close this. Now, I want to ask you guys a question. Why do we use the word to in the sentences above and not very in the sentences, right? So for example, why did I say it's too loud? And why didn't I say, I could have just said it's very loud? Well, the reason for that is because let's go to skills check here for a second. Well, these 2 adverbs, very and to, they have a very similar meaning, okay? But there is one important difference that differentiates between the 2, right? Very here implies that even though something can be tough on you, for example, very hot, very high, very loud, you could still tolerate it to a certain degree. While but of course, when I say the word to, it means there is a problem somewhere, right? So let me open this note here that I made for you guys. We have, what is the difference between very and to? You gotta know that there's a lot of confusion, right? Because if you don't know the difference, you will confuse the 2, right? You got to understand that both come before adjectives or adverbs, right? And both make those words or the situation itself stronger, okay? Now, you got to also know that very does not have a negative meaning, while to does. So when I say the test was very difficult, right, it means that although the test was challenging, you still managed to do it, right? But if I say the test was too difficult, it becomes a problem. It's a negative problem now. That means that, hey, you're actually worried that you might fail because it was too difficult. Let's take one more example here. We have the bag was very expensive. So when I say the bag was very expensive, I mean that although it was expensive, I could probably afford it if I stretch myself, right? But when I say it's too expensive, then that means that it's out of my league. I cannot pay $500 for this or that. Okay? So I think that's about it. One more example. The movie was very exciting. Well, when I say the movie was very exciting, means that I was super excited, I had fun. Yeah. But when I say the movie was too exciting, I'm implying that I might have gotten a heart attack because it was simply too exciting, too much for me. Okay? So basically, in conclusion, is that very is not a negative term. It means that, hey, although the situation, it could have been big or small or hot or cold, I still managed to do it, right? But with too, it seems that a problem, or this has caused me a problem, right? So too as in the exam was too hard, the coffee was too hot, there was a problem and I couldn't finish the task, okay? So that's the difference between very and too. Now let's go to A5 here. We have complete each sentence below with to and an adjective. Okay, so we'll say, I'm 50 now, I'm dash for discos. Well, we'll say, I'm too old for discos, right? B, Sally's only 16, she wants to learn to drive, but she's dash. We'll say, too, again, and we'll say young, okay? But she's too young. So here too means that because she's young, that implies that this is causing problems. Because of her young age, she can't learn how to drive, okay? C, $500 for a jacket, that's dash for me. I'll say that's too expensive for me, right? D, I can't do my math homework, it's dash. We'll say too hard, right? So I can't do my math homework, it's too hard, okay? I hope you got the difference between too and very. Again, so one more time. A, too old, B, too young, C, too expensive, and D, too hard. Now let's move on to exercise B. Let me check this out. Alright, so Sally wants to learn to drive, but she's too young. That's what we wrote. Well, there's another way that we could write or change how this sentence is written. We could use the adjective enough. And how do we do that? Well, when we're talking in a negative way, so we have the subject and the verb, it is not, okay? Big, strong, long, hard, old, it depends. And then you have the adverb enough. So if I say, Sally wants to learn to drive, but she's too young, I could also say, Sally wants to learn to drive, but she isn't old enough, right? Makes sense. So same idea, it's just written in a different way, right? So you only change the adverb, okay? So you use a different adjective and you could use, or you should use, a different adverb as well. So again, Sally wants to learn to drive, but she isn't old enough. Now let's go down here to B3. Here we have some questions. So we have, why can't cows run in horse races? Well, we could simply say they're not fast enough, right? That makes sense. So they're not fast enough. Why couldn't Henry calculate the equation? we could say he wasn't clever enough. Or we could also say he wasn't fast enough. Both are correct. Why can't you make a house from paper? Well, you could say it isn't strong enough. Okay, so one more time. They're not fast enough, he wasn't clever enough, and it isn't strong enough. Okay? Emphasis on the adverb enough. Okay? What do we have? I think that's about it. Now let's move on to the notes here. Here we have C. Read about bird watching and complete the column with notes. Alright, so we're going to be reading about bird watching, and I want you guys to write your own notes down, and then we'll check them together. So here we go. Bird watching, or ornithology, started with civilization. People in ancient India studied birds in 1500 BCE. The Greek philosopher Aristotle named 170 types of birds in the 4th century BCE. Nowadays, we know that there are nearly 10,000 types. The study of birds is called ornithology. The Greek word ornitho means chicken, and the word logos means science. The first magazine for bird watchers appeared in 1859. It was called Hobbies. People watch birds because it is relaxing. They also find the birds themselves interesting. Alright, so based on the text that we just read for bird watching, we'll say, obviously it's called ornithology, right? So we'll write ornithology. And for history, we'll say that it started with civilization. We'll also say that, what can we say? We'll say ancient India studied birds in 1500 BCE, right? And we'll say Aristotle had or named 170 types of birds. So 170 types of birds in the 4th century BCE. And we'll just a quick bracket here, and we'll say now we have 10,000 types, right? We'll also say that the Greek word ornitho means chicken, and the word logos means science. Okay? First magazine, we'll say that it was Hobbies in 1859. Yes, it was called Hobbies in 1859. And why do people do it? Well, we'll say that because it's relaxing and birds are interesting. Okay? Now let's go to exercise D. Read the notes about astronomy. So here we have astronomy, similar to bird watching or ornithology. I want you guys to write a text, right? So basically, you guys see this small text here. Based on the notes that you have, write about astronomy, right? So for example, you could say that astronomy started with civilization, again. You could also say that people in ancient India studied the stars and the planets in 1500 BCE. I'm not making this up. This is all from the notes, okay? Don't freak out. You could also say the Greek philosopher Aristotle said that the planets went round the Earth. But nowadays, we know that the planets go round the sun. Okay? So get creative, but make sure you stay within the lines of the notes. Okay? Here's also another text that I want you guys to write is do some research into your own hobby. We talked about this before. Your own hobby. What do you like to do? Write a text about that. Now let's go to exercise F. Read sentences and circle the correct word or phrase in each case. So let's see what we got here. We have 1. The film made me laugh or laughed. Well, laugh. Can't put that in the past, so the film made me laugh. The sad ending made Laura cry or to cry. No need to use to here, so we'll say cry. I was bored or boring during the film. I was bored during the film. 4. I had a relaxed or relaxing bath. Well, relaxing bath. This cake is too good or very good. Again, if I say too good, then that means there's a problem. It was almost too good for me to the point where I had trouble eating it. So, very good in this case. First class travel is too much expensive or too expensive for most people. We'll say too expensive. No need to use much here. 7. Our hotel room wasn't enough big or big enough, big enough. Never say enough big. Okay, so big enough. Again, 1. Laugh. 2. Cry. 3. Bored. 4. Relaxing. 5. Very good. 6. Too expensive. And 7. Big enough. Okay? So that was writing and grammar, you guys. I'll see you in the next unit. Peace out.